So you just got done watching the new Netflix A24 series, episode 1 of Beef, and the episode being titled The Birds Don't Sing, They Screech in Pain. And you want to talk spoilers about this first episode? Well, you found the right channel to come to. What's going on, and welcome back to MovieFiles. Today we are discussing this first episode of Beef, a series which is created by Lee Sung-jin and stars Steven Yeun and Ali Wong. Now the show is about an incident of road rage slowly consuming the two people involved, and wow, what an amazing way to begin this journey about revenge and having beef with a complete stranger. But before we get into today's spoiler breakdown of episode 1, let me know, what did you all think about this first episode? Now, I am pre-recording this. I haven't seen the rest of the series, so just keep it to episode 1 discussions and spoilers in the comment section. I will have other videos diving deeper into the spoilers by the time this video is out, which will probably be in the description of this video. But again, episode 1 comments, pros, cons, favorite moments, deeper meanings, Easter eggs. Let's have those conversations. But more importantly, after you've seen this first episode, will you be watching the rest of Beef? Let's talk about that in the comment section. And of course, if you all appreciated my review today, consider hitting that thumbs up, sharing this video, and also consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Now, I have been super excited to watch this show ever since I heard about the series, A24 being involved, who was in front and behind the camera, and here we are talking about it. So with that being said, let's get into this episode breakdown. Full spoilers ahead. As we open this episode with meeting one of our main characters who goes by the name of Danny, who's waiting in line to make a return on some hibachi grills and a carbon monoxide detector. We see he's waiting in line and the guy in front of him is having this brief conversation with the cashier, and clearly Danny seems to be in some type of rush, and this conversation between the cashier and the customer, he's not happy with it. As we see, Danny finally gets to the cashier, and immediately he's questioned, or better yet, the cashier makes a statement about this being the third time that he's tried to make a return on these hibachi grills. Now, the cashier embarrasses Danny in front of everyone by making a statement, but then he goes ahead and over the intercom reminds the customers to have the receipts ready, as we see Danny doesn't have his receipt ready as he ends up leaving the store. Now, we see Danny returning back to his truck, and you see that he just wants to explode full of anger, but he bottles it in until he backs up and almost hits this white SUV, who honks at him very obsessively, flicks him off, and drives off. And this leads into Danny raging out and chasing this person in the middle of the street, in the middle of the day, don't care who sees them. As we see this high-speed chase on the road, the person in the SUV is throwing random stuff out of their car and hitting Daddy's truck. We see that Danny eventually manages to catch up with this person, who stops, and we see the SUV proceeds to back into Danny as if they're going to hit them. They stop and they go about their way, but the damage has already been done. As we see Danny watching them pull away, he reads their license plate number, as it is revealed to be Ali Wong's character by the name of Amy. Now, let's have a conversation in the comments, and an honest conversation in the comment section. Have you all ever had a road rage incident where, not as to the extent of Danny and Amy, but someone's either cut you off, flicked you off, said something while they were driving by, and it pissed you off so much that you wanted to think about for a second, just for a split second, you thought about following that person to their home or to their job and not do anything bad to them, but you just want to address them and say, hey, you know what, you're a terrible driver, and you just want to let them know that. Again, let me know. I've had my experiences with road rage, again, not to the extent of these characters, but I just wanted to have the conversation. Have you ever been so mad that you wanted to just pull someone over and let them know how mad you are at them? Let me know in the comments. Share any road rage experiences that you have had in the comments below. But moving back to the breakdown, we cut to Amy in her garage. We see that she's receiving a ton of emails about a potential acquisition of her selling her company. We see one of her employees are worried about their job security. Her husband's reminding her to pick up some coconut milk. And it's pretty clear at this moment that she's pretty stressed out about everything going on in her life right now. Now, this is when we're introduced to her husband, who goes by the name of George, who notices that his wife is upset. Now, George, to me, seems to be a pretty present husband, seems to be thoughtful, but he doesn't want to listen to Amy's problems, as he suggests that she should look at life in a more positive light. So I'm sure you all know a George out there in your life, right? Whether it's someone in your family or someone you might have dated before, where they look at life with a glass half full approach, who, don't get me wrong, they can be a very good influence in your life, but let's be honest, sometimes you just want to vent. Sometimes you want to get things off your chest, and when you don't do that, you might sometimes find yourself freaking out for something small or something illogical, and you find yourself in a dangerous situation like we see Amy with this road rage on this high-speed chase. So let me know what you all think of George so far, and if you think that this whole not allowing herself to be able to be free and express her emotions will be something that we can see maybe exploding later in the rest of the show. Back with Danny, as he's at his apartment, this is where we meet his younger brother by the name of Paul, who seems to be a gamer and he lives in his own kind of world, as Danny tells him that he got into the road rage situation, and he leaves out a lot of details of what actually happened, as Danny explains his version of the story and how the world wants him to feel like he can't be in control, and Danny is just tired of playing these games and playing to these rules. He's forced to have a smile on his face, but in the middle of this conversation, he gets a call from his parents back home, as Danny wants to bring his parents to America, and he promises that he's going to build them a home. Well, it's clear to me that Danny wants to help provide for his family, and you can immediately make that connection between Danny and Amy, as maybe the pressure of being the supporters of their family has caught up to them. And we get a little bit more backstory between this relationship between Danny and Paul, as Paul is living rent-free and he's gambling away his money investing in crypto, and Danny's been doing his best to keeping his family on track after losing what seems to be a family hotel business due to their cousin doing some shady business, and Danny does his handiwork to make ends meet. Now, cutting back to Amy and her plant business that she owns, we get a little bit of backstory of her situation, as the same employee that we saw earlier in the episode, worried about their job security, lets us know as an audience that her husband George comes from money and his father was some type of famous artist who has passed away. We get this moment where we see Amy interacting with one of her customers who wants to take a selfie with her, and you notice this sense of like Amy going through the motions, and she might be going through a possible identity crisis where everyone from the outside sees her as a successful person with a beautiful family who seems to live an easy life, but then you look at Amy who's seamlessly putting on a fake smile to keep from crying from the inside. So let me know if you guys got that sense of Amy, that she's bottling her emotions, she's not able to be herself, especially in this moment where she probably just wants to cry and wants to go home. Cutting back to Danny, who's doing some work for one of his clients, we see him looking for more work as a contractor, but his client just sees him as a regular handyman, as Danny takes a discount rate to trim this person's tree in the front yard. As he's leaving, he hears the person's wife saying that they need to fire him because Danny's so annoying. So right now, I feel kind of bad for Danny, as it seems like he can never catch a break, but again, pointing out the connection between our two leads, where one seems to have it all in Amy, while Danny struggles to keep the little that he has, but both aren't happy with their current situations. It's really doing a good job for me in this part of the episode of showing you that you can't never judge a book by its cover, because you never know what someone's going through. Now, back with Amy, who's at home at this point in the episode, she overhears her mother-in-law, who goes by the name of Fumi, talking to George about their daughter's art, and George definitely seems like a mommy's boy, and Amy just wants to appease her mother-in-law, as Amy calmly explains that their daughter struggles with anxiety and she doesn't need to have the pressure on her to be the best artist possible. You notice that Amy keeps her real feelings at bay and doesn't really express her emotions, which again seems to be bottled up just like Danny. Which, speaking of Danny, we see and meet his cousin by the name of Isaac, who is the one responsible for their family losing their motel business. Now, Isaac has recently come home from jail, as we see Danny just kind of going with the flow of the conversation, as Isaac was clearly in the wrong with the wholesale situation, but he manages to make Danny feel bad for asking for money. But we see Isaac assures him that he'll pay him $20,000 as a sorry for the hotel loss, as things might be looking better for Danny. He's going to be getting $20,000 soon, as well as his brother's investments are now in the green. So right now, Danny's life seems to be going in the right direction, as we head over to seeing him going to trimming those trees. He's definitely doing this on a very low shoestring budget, as he thinks that he sees the same SUV that he got into the situation with. He falls from the tree. He's okay, but unfortunately the homeowners see this and they fire him on the spot. And to make matters worse, the investment that his brother put in, which was green, all of a sudden went into the red. So again, Danny just can't seem to catch a break. Now, cutting back to Amy, who's with George as they arrive to a party hosted by a character by the name of Jordan, who's the person that's lined up to buy Amy's business. And we find out that Jordan happens to be the owner of the same store that Danny went to, attempting to return those hibachi grills earlier in the episode. So you can see that it's starting to all come together and all these characters starting to connect to one another. As we see, Jordan is living the extreme rich and expensive life. But we get the whole idea of this relationship between Amy and Jordan, as Amy has to kind of play along and ignore some inappropriate comments made by Jordan, who acts like she's super cultured. And again, Amy has to ignore this behavior in order to assure that this deal happens, as Jordan is ready to get the paperwork started and close this deal as long as Amy doesn't screw this up. Meanwhile, Danny's eating multiple chicken sandwiches from Burger King as he is trying to buy land for his family can move there. And we know those investments earlier are now in the red. And also, speaking of the red, Danny's health seems to be the last thing on his mind at this moment. But notice again that Amy has to play make-believe happy-go-lucky to cut this deal for her business and to provide for her family and to spend more time with them, as Danny has to do this low-paying, hard labor jobs in order to get his family to share a home together. Now, both are extremely different approaches and opportunities, but at the root of it, it's important for them to both feel happy about their families being taken care of. And again, this is the stress that they carry on their shoulders every day. As we cut to Amy now at home, who's watching a video of the road rage situation caught on camera by her neighbor, but for now, nobody knows that she was involved, and this is exactly what Jordan was referring to, that this is something that can derail that business deal. As she goes to her safe, and she goes to get something in the safe, but she notices that the code has changed. We'll be talking about that a little bit later, but her daughter, Yeun, has a nightmare, and we see Amy calming her down. She tells her about when she was born. As Yeun does fall asleep, we still see Amy talking about how much Yeun has meant to her and it changed her life for the better, and that she is just so happy that she can finally spend time with her family. And again, we're seeing what motivates these characters, what wakes these characters up, what is it that they work for. And again, these are really great character moments. But going back to Danny, we find out what he bought those hibachi grills for, as we see that he is actually in the process of trying to unalive himself. But fortunately, we don't see him do this. He decides to stop because he says it doesn't feel right, and he almost has like a rebirth or a second chance in life, as this kind of inspires him when he finds the receipt from when he was trying to make the return earlier, as this is what motivates him to look up the license plate for finding Amy. Next morning, Amy approaches George about the safe code change and claims to want what's in that safe because she's concerned about crazy people in the neighborhood. But George didn't tell her because clearly Amy has a bad history of what was ever in that safe, which we'll talk about here. But as we wrap up this premiere episode, we see Amy cracks the code by using her mother-in-law's birthday. And what was in that safe is a gun. And we see that she's like intimately using this gun to have a pleasure moment for herself. Meanwhile, Danny's on the road to try to find her address that he found from online with Amy's license plates. Danny finally arrives and he makes up this story about Amy's roof repairs being unsafe, and he manages to make his way into her home. As Amy has no idea who he is, as we get our first official meeting between the two characters here, Danny plays coy and normal and plays nice and kind and compliments her remodeling that Amy made. And I'm not sure if you guys were reading this scene the same way I was, but when Danny asks if her husband was home and she tells him that no, he isn't, that was probably not the smartest move to say, no, my husband's not home, because number one, that's not safe. So I started to think of it like, was this kind of like a sexual kind of comment by Amy? Like, no, my husband is at home, so we can maybe fool around potentially. Or you all were thinking the same thing in that moment? Let me know in the comments. But as we wrap up, we see Danny request to take a look at her garage, and I had no idea what Danny was going to do. I closed the door, he looks at the wall, and he claims that there's warping going on, as Amy starts to vent about never being enough. enough and goes on this kind of small tangent. They kind of share a moment, and they kind of have like a moment where they can both agree that life can be tough for both of them. And Danny is still under the impression that the person that he got into the car accident with was a man. He's thinking that it's Amy's husband. But going back to this scene here, do you all think initially Danny was going over there to maybe try to sleep with Amy to get back at who he believed was the husband driving the car? Or do you all think ultimately he was just there to do what he's about to do in this final sequence here? Let me know your thoughts on that. But speaking of the final sequence, we see that Danny does learn that it was Amy in the car. He goes to the bathroom, and Amy's calling George to let him know that a contractor's over. He's willing to do some work on the house. Meanwhile, Danny rushes out of the house like he had somewhere to go, and he leaves Amy a very special gift. As Amy walks over to the bathroom to find the gift, and the gift is no other than pee all over her expensive carpets, all over the floor. She runs out of the house. She chases him while Danny is just laughing. He drives off. He flicks her off to return that favor. She does the same thing that he does. She remembers his license plate, and the games have begun, and the beef has started between Danny and Amy. Wow, I am hooked. What a great opening episode with phenomenal performances, number one, by Steven Yeun and Ali Wong. The writing to me was incredible, and the build up to that ending was nothing short of perfect in my opinion. I didn't expect this to be so deep and showing us something that is so relatable. At least I'll speak for myself in regards to sometimes suppressing our feelings to appease others, which isn't the smartest thing to do, as we see sometimes it can come out in a very toxic and dangerous way. And based on this episode, I'm confident that Netflix and the collaboration with A24, they have a hit on their hands. Seeing our two leads who have completely different lifestyles, but them sharing a common passion and providing for their families. But in doing so, they seem to have kind of put in their own personal mental health on the sidelines in order to make sure that those they love are taken care of and they are happy. This will be such an interesting journey to experience in the next 9 episodes. So I'm very excited to see where this road rage situation takes these characters and learning more about our main characters, where they come from, why they do the things that they do in this episode, as well as the supporting cast. I'm very interested to learn more about Paul, Isaac, George, the mother-in-law Fumi, and whoever else gets involved in this web of pettiness. Now, I know A24, and based on the trailer, I'm pretty confident in saying that I'm sure that this will be a lot darker than someone just coming to someone's house and peeing over their expensive floor. So I'm very confident that this will get very dark and very twisted, just knowing the history of A24. So I'm hooked. I'm on board. I'm about to watch the rest of this series. So again, this is a pre-recorded video just breaking down this first episode. By the time this is up, I'll probably have a deeper dive, spoiler type of discussion on this series, which you can find that breakdown in the description of this video. So thank you all for watching this episode 1 breakdown. Again, let me know your thoughts on this episode 1 in the comments. We're just focusing on the first episode, no spoilers for the rest of the season. So again, let me know your pros, your cons, your deeper meanings, your Easter eggs, and what did you all take away with this first episode. Thank you again for watching this video. Before you all leave, just a friendly reminder to like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And again, as you can see on the screen now, come and join the community. Check out my breakdown, diving deep into the spoilers for Beef. Check out my other content, and I'll catch you all on the next breakdown.